The world remembers the moon landing as a moment of triumph, but very few people know how painfully slow, complicated, and nerve-wracking the journey actually was. It didn't start with excitement. It started with fear. Back in the early 1960s, America woke up to a terrifying reality. The Soviet Union had beaten them into space. They sent the first satellite. They sent the first human. And every success from the Soviet side echoed through Washington like a warning bell. If they could reach space first, what else could they do? Inside the White House, the pressure was suffocating. Politicians argued. Scientists tried to explain. Generals whispered about national security. And in the middle of this storm, one idea began to rise. Go to the moon. Not someday, but now. Kennedy didn't make the decision because it sounded heroic. He made it because America was falling behind. And falling behind meant looking weak. Looking weak meant danger. So a plan was born. A plan so huge, so expensive, so unbelievably complicated, that even NASA wasn't sure they could pull it off. The early days were messy. Rockets exploded. Engines malfunctioned. Blueprints changed weekly. Inside NASA's halls, engineers worked like ghosts, barely sleeping, constantly correcting, constantly testing. Some nights they just stared at a single bolt or a single panel for hours, wondering how it might fail. The astronauts trained endlessly. Not glamorous training, not heroic training, just repetitive, boring, muscle-breaking routines, over and over and over again. Simulators shook. Alarms rang. Everything was designed to go wrong, so that once they were actually in space, they could stay alive. Then came the tragedies, and the hardest one of all, the Apollo 1 fire. 3 astronauts gone, even before the rocket left the ground. That moment nearly broke the program. But somehow, instead of stopping, they rebuilt everything. Slower, tighter, safer. Years passed. Millions of documents. Thousands of tests. Hundreds of redesigns. And finally, piece by piece, the gigantic Saturn V rocket stood ready. A tower of metal. And hope. And fear. Launch day wasn't heroic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. Heavy. Everyone in mission control sat frozen. Their palms wet. Their hearts shaking. When the engines roared to life, the entire world vibrated. The ground trembled like thunder rolling under their feet. And slowly, painfully slowly, the rocket climbed upward. The journey to the moon wasn't fast either. It was long, silent, and full of tiny invisible dangers. A wrong angle, a wrong command, a wrong wire, any one of them could end everything. Inside the capsule, the astronauts floated in the small metal room, monitoring every gauge, every blinking light, every whisper from mission control. They barely slept, barely ate. Every breath felt borrowed. As they approached the moon, the silence became deeper, darker, more real. The surface appeared beneath them like a world made of shadows. Then came the landing, the most dangerous moment of all. The lunar module shook. Fuel dropped. Alarms rang. Dust blurred the view. And for a few seconds, even NASA wasn't sure if they would make it. Then, contact. A whisper. Houston, the Eagle has landed. History changed. When Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon, he wasn't thinking about TV cameras. He wasn't thinking about glory. He was thinking about survival, about making sure the surface didn't collapse, about making sure they could go home. Every movement was deliberate, slow, almost painfully careful. The footprints he left behind weren't just marks on the moon. They were marks on human history. Back on Earth, millions watched, unable to breathe. It didn't matter who they were. American, European, African, Asian. For one night, humanity stood together. But the mission wasn't over. Experiments had to be done. Photos had to be taken. Data had to be collected. Everything mattered. Everything counted. Because this wasn't only a victory, it was knowledge. Knowledge that Earth was small, fragile, and that humanity could dream beyond it. Eventually it was time to leave, to fire the engines again, to return through the silent darkness. And when the capsule splashed down in the ocean, the entire journey, years of fear, failures, tests, pressure, hope, and courage, finally felt real. This wasn't just a trip to the moon. It was the story of people who refused to quit, engineers who worked until their hands shook, astronauts who trained until their bodies collapsed, leaders who gambled their careers, and a nation that took the greatest risk in human history. The moon landing wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was determination, sacrifice, and the belief that even in the coldest moments of fear, humanity can rise. And that is how the long, slow, painful journey to the moon truly began. One decision, one rocket, one step that changed the world forever.